I have some tomatoes right here. You know, I was getting ready to can some today.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm April Martin with UT Extension in DeKalb County.
And I'm Shelley Barnes with UT Extension in Wilson County.
And today we'd like to show you the proper steps for canning tomatoes. Before we get started though, we'd appreciate it if you'd take just a second, click the subscribe button down below so that you'll get more videos on canning.
And give us a like while you're there too. Come on, let's go. Tomatoes can be processed in either a boiling water canner or a pressure canner if they are acidic enough to inhibit the growth of Clostridium botulinum bacteria. However, recent research shows for some products, pressure canning will result in a high quality and more nutritious product. In 1994, USDA recommended that home food preservers add an acidifying agent such as lemon juice or citric acid because, as a rule, consumers do not know the specific pH of the tomatoes they grow or buy. When you can tomatoes, add either a bottled lemon juice or the citric acid. Squeezing fresh lemons is not recommended because the acidity of the fruit can vary. Acidity in the bottled lemon juice is more consistent. When canning tomatoes, you will need about 21 pounds of tomatoes for 7 quarts, about 13 pounds of tomatoes for 9 pints. A bushel weighs 53 pounds and yields 15 to 21 quarts, an average of 3 pounds per quart. Regular tomatoes work very well for juice and canned tomatoes. Okay, so now we're ready to get started. So let's go over the supplies that we need. First of all, we're going to need a cutting board and a paring knife. And we're going to show you more about that a little bit later. And then we're going to need our 2-piece lid system. We've got our flat lids and our rings. These are essential. These are the only items that are recommended. And we also need our canning jars. This is a canning funnel. You can see that it's wide at the top and it fits right into the canning jar. Makes it really easy. We also need a ladle so that we can easily ladle our product into the jar and funnel combination. And we need a jar lifter, and this is used this way to pick up our jars. That way we don't burn ourselves. And this is a spatula. We use this as a bubble releaser. When we have the product in there, we will slide the spatula down into the side and we will move it over a little bit to release the air bubbles that have formed in the bottom. My favorite gadget of all time in the canning world is our lid lifter. This lid lifter works so fun when the lids are in the pan. The magnet sucks up the little lid and makes it easy for you to get it out. Lastly, we will need a measuring spoon for our lemon juice, and an optional item would be salt. You can use salt if it is desired, but just remember this is for flavor only and does not help preserve your food product. Thank you. Make sure to wash your tomatoes thoroughly. Wash every one. For a pro's tip, if you want to make sure that your tomato skins come off easily when we boil them, score a gentle X in the bottom, and those tomato skins will come off very easily. Next, dip your scored tomatoes in hot water for 30 to 60 seconds until the skins begin to split. Once the skins start peeling off, we're going to dip them into a cold water bath. This one's coming off really good. Once your tomatoes have cooled down a little bit, you can just peel those skins right off. See how easy that is? So now that we have all of the skins off of our tomatoes, the next step is to core our tomatoes. So we're just going to gently take the knife and we're going to cut around the core of the tomato. Don't cut yourself, and we're going to gently pull that out. There's lots of recipes for canning tomatoes. You can can your tomatoes whole. You can quarter them like this. You could cut it once in half and then in half again on both sides. You can also crush your tomatoes. You can use water for your tomatoes. You can use tomato juice. Lots of different recipes. So we want to make sure that you use a tested recipe. The best source is going to be from USDA or the Cooperative Extension Service. And you can find our recipe below this video or go to the Extension Explorer's website found in the description below. We are ready to get our jars filled. And so for this recipe, we are canning whole tomatoes packed in water. And the reason we've chosen this recipe is because the processing time is a little bit less. So we'll have a little bit more time to do some other things here around the office. We have already prepared our jars with our 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then we are going to make sure you use your jar lifter because these jars sure are warm. We are going to take our cored whole tomatoes and we are going to place them in our jar. And I will show you in just a second. We want to make sure that they kind of lay pretty, especially if you're thinking about entering these in your fair. Your fair might be coming up soon. So you want to make sure that the outside of the tomato shows in the outside of the jar, and hopefully the inside that you've cored will be turned to the inside of the jar. That's nothing to do with food safety, all about making the jar of the tomatoes look pretty. So we're going to pack these in here and we're going to get as many in there as we can. Seems like the smaller tomatoes do work the best. And so that might be all I can add into this jar. So you can see that we have created quite a bit of tomato particles on the outside of that jar. So we're gonna wipe it off. We have these 2 ready here. And we're going to take our canning funnel and our boiling water, still steaming, and we are going to fill this for a 1/4 of an inch headspace. I mean half an inch, excuse me. Huh? It's steaming. Should I say that again?
No. Okay. Okay.
Okay. There we go. And you can see, let me show this to you real quick. There is a tool that one of the canning companies does put out that has a little staircase and it's on the end of the bubble freer. And you can use that to determine your headspace, but you can also use the rings on the outside of the lip of the jar. So this bottom ring here would be 1 inch headspace. The one here in the middle would be about a 1/2 inch headspace. And then the tallest one on the top would be about a 1/4 inch headspace. So for these tomatoes, we're aiming for this middle ring here. So we're going to use our funnel. We're going to pour water in our funnel. Once it gets to the top, we are lifting our funnel out, and that happens a lot. You gotta, nope, that's not gonna work. Okay, and we're gonna fill this jar up to 1/2 an inch headspace, and that's about right. Once we get our tomato product in there, we are going to gently push our spatula to the edge of the jar, and we're just gonna ever so slightly move those tomatoes. We'll do it on both sides, and you can see the air bubbles popping up. Then we're gonna just press that tomato product back down again. And we'll do it on this one as well. Do it on every one so that we can free those bubbles. We want as little bubbles, air bubbles, in our jars as possible. Okay. The next part is to make sure that we wipe the sides of our jar and the rim to make sure that there are no food particles left on the outside or the rim of our jar. We don't want anything preventing us from having a tight seal and making our food shelf stable. Then I get to use my favorite tool, and that is the lid lifter. So you just put your magnet in the pan and lift your lid. Now, the good canner that I am, we are going to line up the brand on the lid to the brand of the jar. Because who knows, maybe I'll enter these in our county fair. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to screw on our band, finger tight, and maybe a tad more. And now we're ready for the big moment. We're going to put our jars in our water bath canner. So one thing that we want to make sure is when we have our water boiling in any pot that we're using, this is not just a canning trick, make sure you lift your lid away from your face so that way all of that steam does not hit you in your face. This does have a canning rack inside of it, and I'll pull that out so you can see. You can lift it up and put your jars in there, or you can go ahead and put it down, whatever is easiest for you. We have 3 jars that we've worked on today, so I'm probably going to go ahead and just leave that down. Then I'm going to pick our jars up with our jar lifter and gently set them into our canner. Each one, we're being very careful to move them slowly and make sure that they are level the whole way we're transporting them. One thing to note as well is you want to make sure that your water is at least 1 inch over the tops of these jars. We may need to add a little bit more water. One important item to note is to make sure that you check your altitude. Today, April and I are canning in Smithville, Tennessee, which is DeKalb County, and the altitude here is 1,030 feet. That moves us up into a different category, and that category is 1,001 to 3,000 feet. It's suggested by the National Center for Home Food Preservation to process our pint jars for 45 minutes and our quart jars for 50 minutes. So we're going to have to wait until our water boils and start timing 50 minutes at that point. Make sure you check your tested recipe for your altitude processing times. So now we're going to put our lid on, because remember, a watch pot never boils, and my granny always told me to make sure that you put your lid on, it'll boil faster.
And now our tomatoes have finished processing, and we're going to let these sit undisturbed for 24 hours.